Welcome back to another video. Today we're reviewing the DJI Action 5 Pro, and this video is not sponsored at all. I bought this with my own money to see if it's actually worth using for the things I record for my channel. And everything you're seeing by default will be shot on the Action 5 Pro unless I state otherwise. We're running 4K 60 rocksteady on. I have a manual exposure, but I'm usually trying to keep the EV around 0, maybe between 0 and -1. But I'm not doing too many crazy things to it. And yeah, we'll take it around. While we're going around, I'll talk about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and then you guys will also see video clips of how it looks. So starting off, let's talk about what I like about it. I like that the touchscreen is on the front so you can see yourself as you're vlogging or moving around. I like the back screen. It's very intuitive. It's very easy to just pick up and use this camera. It does take some practice to go ahead and hone it in terms of settings, but the image that comes from it is very nice. It's very straightforward. I don't know if there's a way to make this camera look better if you want to dive into those settings, but it's not necessary depending on what you're doing. Now, this is an action camera, so it is useful, doing activities, but I don't really do that stuff on my channel. I am consistently looking for a camera that can do it all. I've been using phones. I still use phones, and I tried the DJI Action 4. Didn't really like it too much because I shoot a lot in low light, and this camera has improved in terms of low light, but not drastically enough to warrant it being a low light camera. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm out of breath. With that being said, it's a good product. It's a good device. Build quality is good. The accessories are really good. Action cameras have a lot of universal accessories. The built-in microphone is really good. Even at this length, right? I'm outside. It's good quality. The second I go into a darker lit area, it gets a little iffy. But then, like I said, the accessories are there so you can add a little light to make it better. Here's a quick little look. Quality is really good. And I am walking, so that stabilization is definitely coming into play. If I tilt around, it doesn't mess it up too much. And this is good to just set up, and you have time lapse, you have different things, and I'll show it in the settings when I show the screen, but you have a lot of options with this camera. You have a lot of things to play with, and if you want just a quick hit go and record experience, you can have that. But if you want something you can kind of fiddle with, you have that as well. It is an action camera, like I said, so you can't really choose your focus. Everything is always in focus, which sometimes creates an issue when you want to focus on just one thing. For example, if I'm recording some gameplay on an item that I'm using, if I want to focus on just the ROG Ally or Steam Deck, it's not going to do that. It's going to record and focus on everything, my desk mat, whatever's in the background, my hands, and that can sometimes create issues. And as an example, this is me in one of my use cases, which is my office, and this is usually the layout. I don't have that many lights in here, so what I do is just kind of shoot in the dark with a light, and right now I'm using the little light attachment to the actual case, and this works fine. But on that same note, another use case is me showing gameplay of things. And for example, if you look at the screen right here, it's just not as clear or distinct or legible as something like an iPhone or dedicated camera. It's, you have to get really close, and even then it's blurry. And if you go really far, you can still crop it, but it's still not the same. And I think that's because this camera's focusing on everything, like this as much as this. The low light doesn't help that as well. Let's go into this lower lit area and see how it is. So even in here, quality's not that bad. Then again, we are in daytime. If it's nighttime, no shot is gonna look this good. There's also face tracking. I'm not gonna do it because I don't want it, but it's there if you want it. And because of the mount, you can go ahead and flip it over as well. But yeah, for something that you can just plop down and use, it's a really good product. If you are into vlogging or into sports and you want something just to strap onto you to set and forget, this is a good product for that. If you're not into vlogging and you're more into indoor shooting, I honestly think there's better options. And for this price point of $350, at the moment. I think you can get something that suits your needs a little better. Maybe the Sony ZV-1F, ZV-1 if you go a little higher. There's different things, and I myself find myself getting into cameras more and want to kind of explore those. So it's definitely per use case. Now, I did go ahead and record some low light footage, and when I say low light, I mean like nighttime, no lights around. This thing does have a night mode. I think it's new on the Action 5 Pro. That kind of relies on having lights around you, and when you don't have lights around you, the night mode doesn't really do much. So you'll see that kind of sucks in nighttime. But then again, I think any camera would suck in pitch dark, but with the camera attachment, with the light attachment that I show in the video, you can still record yourself and walk around. But when you want to show something, it's very difficult unless you have a flashlight. So I wouldn't knock the camera on that. I think all cameras would struggle there. But I would say that this camera needs light. It's an action camera. It's meant to be used during the day. And if you were to use it at night, you will notice some muddy imaging, which I think is normal because most of the actionable things you might record this with are going to take place during the day. Cave diving might not. I'm curious as to how that works, but you probably have a lot of lights in the cave. I don't know. So like I was mentioning before, there's a lot of things I like about this camera. The audio quality is really, really good. The picture when you're in the correct lighting is really good. And it's just easy to use. It's one hit button to start it. It may seem daunting at first, but then once you actually get into it and play around with it, it is able to be customized to your needs to a certain capability. I would say that if you are someone who wants to really dial it in, this isn't the camera for that. But then I'd also argue that action cameras aren't really meant for that. I personally like to see where we can have the form factor of an action camera, but the performance of an actual camera. And I think the crossroads of that is just a smartphone. And I think we've all been spoiled by smartphones, how they're just so versatile and they keep on getting better and better in such a small form factor. I would just like to have a dedicated device that's not my phone to do that. And Action 5 Pro is not there yet, but I have confidence that soon it might be. One thing that I really do like about this, and I mentioned it before, is just the amount of accessories. You can go on Amazon and buy a $20 bundle of action camera accessories, and you have a chest mount, you have a head mount, you have wrist mount. So whatever activity you want to do outdoors or indoors, you have it there. But again, it's catered towards outdoors and catered towards, you know, shots of adventure. I guess movement is where you get a good use of this, but me sitting at my desk recording a desk view, it's not going to get the best results. But it really is just a nice portable device. Like I'll record on my iPhone right here and just show the setup. It's just a small selfie stick right here and the camera, which is smaller than my hand. And although I'm shooting in 4K resolution, I usually render it in 1080p, so I have as much quality as I can get, but then because I don't want a huge file size, I go for 1080. I guess I'll talk about the cons of this camera, but it's not really the cons, it's just things you have to kind of be aware of. 4K is the best quality you can get out of this camera, and it looks really nice. That being said, the file sizes are big. So if you want to render in 4K and shoot all that, just expect to have a large file size and large files, and therefore you'll need more storage. Whereas if you're shooting in 1080p and the 1080p looks a lot crisper than it does on here, because this doesn't look the crispiest in 1080p. 4K is going to get you the best results, but those file sizes of 1080p drastically smaller. I'm going to go ahead and show some examples of just, you know, having on chest mount, going fishing. I haven't done anything too activity based, but going for a night walk, maybe setting it up in the car and driving. The smalls are closer by. All right, here is a night test It's dark outside, and this is the normal mode. And as you can see, well, you can't see anything. Now we're using the super night mode, and without lights around, you really still can't see anything. I wouldn't even say this is better than the default mode. I think super night is better optimized for when you actually have lights around you, so it actually hits the camera. Now we're back to normal camera mode, but I have a light attachment to the side of this, and you can actually see it's working pretty well. I adjusted the exposure so it's showing a little bit more light, but even with this light's not that strong, so you can't see that far. You can see ahead of you maybe 5 feet, but not too bad. And now we're using the super night mode with the light attachment, and I honestly think this looks a little worse. It looks a little bit too grainy. Oh, it's pretty windy outside. I don't know if you guys can hear that. It looks a little mushy, like there's a smear filter on. Now this light definitely helps for when you're doing selfie. Like, I'm pretty close. Actually, I'm not even that close. I would say this is about like a little over a foot. And then this is the lowest brightness. So you can get fairly bright, and I can put this out a lot more if I wanted to get pretty good definition. But again, once we spin her around, you're not seeing that much. So if you're using this for vlogging and walking around, it's pretty good. But if you're using this to show the landscape at nighttime, not that good. Let's go ahead and give the stabilization a shot. Again, I have rocksteady on, not rocksteady plus. So let's say we're here and we're jogging, and if I were to swing it around, hopefully it's not too jumpy. Let's jump. The other thing I really like about this is the mounting system. How if you just flip the camera to the side, and a lot of cameras are doing this now, but if you flip it to the side, it changes to portrait mode. And because the case that comes with it, and also the small rig case that I have, has side points, you can just mount it sideways too, and it's very convenient. I would say DJI is getting to the point where their action cameras are not only action cameras, but they're becoming content creator cameras as well. And I think having an arsenal of different cameras for different use cases where they specialize in different scenarios is a good thing, although it's expensive. So going through the settings, you can essentially do anything on this camera you can with a real camera, just not as fleshed out, let's say. You can hook up an external mic. You can go ahead and use the DJI mic, which doesn't need a transmitter. It just works wirelessly, which is really cool. I'm not really going to buy a new mic just to try that out, but I've seen videos and that's cool. And then you can also get, filters to put on the actual lens itself if you want to get that effect. I guess I said it's a nice camera multiple times. Is it for me? I don't think so. But is it a camera that has a use? Yeah. And when you're comparing it to the market, I guess the competitive market, you have GoPro and you have Insta. I think GoPro kind of went down the poop hole. Like, they're expensive, they're not as customizable, and like, you need a mod case for GoPro just to use an external mic. And the adapters aren't as intuitive as DJI. The Insta models are nice, it has the flip screen, and I think that's probably a better competitor when it comes to this. But I think the DJI Action 5 Pro beats it price-wise. And at the end of the day, if you want something that's reliable and affordable, you're probably going to go over that over something else that has the same qualities but is more expensive. That's kind of a no-brainer. Who wouldn't do that? I guess I'm just rambling. Another thing I need to mention is it's not just the videos. You can take pictures on this, do time lapses, do slow-mo mode. So there's a lot of stuff you can use for as well. And I guess this is turning into a vlog because I keep on jumping from different location to location, but I'm busy, I don't know. What do you want me to do? And that's essentially it, guys. That's just my review. I wouldn't say review. That's my impression of the DJI Action 5 Pro. It's a great action camera and it can fit many needs depending on what your needs are. But it is versatile enough where you can use it for multiple things. And although it doesn't fit my specific ones, it can definitely fit yours. And the good thing about these cameras are the improvements aren't drastic between them. So if you get the Action 4, you're still gonna get great performance. You might miss on some capabilities that they add on, but I think the DJI Action 4, you can get a whole bundle for $200 compared to this being $350. So if you don't mind getting a generation behind, that's a great way to get pretty much the same capability for a cheaper price. Yeah. Also, if you want to get a dash cam, action cameras are kind of slept on. You can get an old generation action camera and just mount it in your car and have it there. I don't think a lot of people do that, but it's a lot easier and it's wireless. It's up to you. I don't control what you do. I actually don't care what you do. I'm sure there's stuff I didn't answer, and that's because this is kind of me just shooting from the hip. I wasn't trying to make a comprehensive review of comparing this to other cameras or showing all the settings. There's professionals out there on YouTube who do this stuff for a living in terms of cameras, and they know way more than I do. So I think they are a better person to look at for this stuff. Hopefully this video could help you either decide to get one or not to get one, or just find out more information and get someone else's perspective. I think getting multiple perspectives from people, especially people who aren't paid by DJI, is important, because if you get a sponsored video, you're usually only going to talk about the benefits and not the drawbacks. And again, I'm not saying this camera has a lot of drawbacks, but the drawbacks will either be larger or more minor depending on what you're using that camera for. For me, the low light settings, the not being able to focus on items, that's a pretty big drawback. But for someone who is an active fisher or a snowboarder, or they go hunting or whatever and they need something to capture, it does its job. It's really good. So if you have any questions, leave it down in the comments. If you want to see more videos in the future, consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.